Hello and welcome to the first episode of Footnotes. Today I'm joined by Dr. Melissa MacDonald, aka Dr. Mac, who earned her Doctor of Chiropractic and then spent 2 years of specialty training in the Human Performance Center, where she focused her research and clinical skills on specific testing and treatment protocols. Additionally, Dr. Mac served as the team clinician for the Minnesota Vixen, a professional women's football team that won the conference championship in 2018. Dr. Mac is the chief medical officer for River City Rhythms, a drum corp international marching band, the team chiropractor for the Minnesota Roller Derby, and the team chiropractor of the Minnesota Pride. Dr. Mack has achieved both international and national certification as a chiropractic sport provider. She is a speaker on chiropractic issues in the United States as well as abroad, and she hosts the Mac Performance Podcast, a health and wellness podcast that will whiplash you into health. This conversation runs a little long as we discuss a myriad of issues, like how is chiropractic overlooked in education and medicine, what specific elements of chiropractic are most plagued by misconceptions, and what is overlooked even in studying and obtaining licensure in chiropractic. We also take a deep dive into the history of the profession and discuss how things have changed over the years. We talk about internal tensions within the profession, and we answer the question of whether calling chiropractic alternative is problematic. All this and more on today's episode of Footnotes, What You Didn't Learn About Chiropractic. Hello.
Oh, hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We don't have to pretend that we just met for the first
Oh,
time.
I
It's
don't
okay.
know.
Yeah, it's always that weird awkward moment when you start recording of should I just pretend I just met this person for the first time ever, or is it okay that we've been talking for a few minutes?
I hate lead-ins to podcasts. They're the worst.
I know. Um, So, because this is going to be most likely the first episode that goes live, I kind of want to take just a minute to kind of give the audience kind of the general vibe and the general mission of the show so that they kind of know what to expect as we get into our specific conversation. Um, Footnotes is primarily concerned with hidden knowledge, things you might not have learned through a profession or through the education system, things that get overlooked because they're overshadowed by other things in some circumstances, but that are completely important and have their own merits on their own, and that can be very important and influential to our communities, to us as individuals, to our pursuits of different avenues in life. And so I want to have conversations with people from different backgrounds who are experts in their given field to one capacity or another so that they can provide some kind of insight and kind of provide us with that hidden knowledge that would otherwise go overlooked. So today I have with me Dr. Melissa MacDonald, also known as Dr. Mac. You heard all about her very thorough, very awesome career in the introduction. And so, Dr. Mac, Melissa, I wanted to ask you, um, you were the team clinician for the Minnesota Vixen. You were the chief medical officer currently for River City Rhythms, the team chiropractor for Inman Roller Derby, the team chiropractor of the Inman Pride. How do you balance all of that, and how does your profession differ in those different contexts? Because your your primary focus that I could find was sports chiropractic medicine, but this seems like a very wide category that can be kind of all over the place.
It's true. So this is one thing I loved about getting into chiropractic was that there were a bunch of different ways I could have taken my career. I could have been a radiologist. I could have been specialized in nutrition, but I decided to specialize in sports. And with doing that, it has allowed me to travel, work with teams, and meet amazing people because it's what I wanted to do. So, a lot of times when we think of a chiropractor, we think of pulling up to their clinic, going inside, getting treated, and carrying on with our day. And that's our only understanding of what they do. And ultimately, as a chiropractor, when we go to school, that's kind of how it's presented that we have to do. You get your degree, you pass all your licensing exams, you get your certificate, you get your diploma, you get the huge stamp of student loan debt, and then you go hang your shingle and set up your table and start cracking people's backs. But going through school, I realized there are so many ways we can, in quote, hang our shingle and be out of our office. So I like to treat so yes, I have an office, but I like to be out on the field with my athletes treating with them depending upon what's going on. So when Minnesota Roller Derby has a bout, I'm in the back staging area treating the athletes before they warm up, while they warm up, after in between bout matches, and ultimately I get covered in glitter because that is just how that sport is. Or maybe it's with my Drum Corps International Marching Band and they're training for 3 months straight, marching 9 hours a day, and I'm set up in a tent with a table out in the field treating them where they are performing, and that is where I find the most fun.
Now, is your style of work like more common than I might think, or are you kind of like an anomaly in that sense, in that you don't work in a centralized location? You have an office, but you travel with these teams and stuff. Is that maybe more common than I would expect?
No, I'm definitely a little bit of an odd duck, but it all depends upon what you wanna do. There's a larger movement right now for what we call home chiropractic, where chiropractors are instead of having the expense of setting up an office, maybe they're having a mobile RV or they're having a mobile van where they just carry everything and actually treat out of people's homes. So there's a number of ways that people are starting to modify and take away costs or modify costs, especially now that we just survived a global pandemic that no one saw coming. And how do we adapt to the scenarios around us to best care for our people?
That makes sense. I think even that alone, like the idea of doing in-home visits or going to see people in that capacity, makes it more of like it makes it less like going to the dentist's office. It makes it more social and makes it more engaging, maybe, and more fun. I have a couple of friends who have like a really close like relationship with a given chiropractor, but those who don't see a chiropractor.
Chiropractic is rather a small niche. I mean, whenever they do national studies, we're only treating about 8 to 9% of the population. That so we're kind of fighting over this tiny little chunk. And it's true, if you've never seen a chiro, there's a lot of misinformation about what we do, what we don't do. And frankly, there are quite a few quacks in the profession, which don't even get me started, but you probably will. And because of those experiences and sometimes frankly with how the media portrays us, we're not a profession that people just kind of wander into. They have to have that connection to going and seeing one. We don't usually your first source to seek out.
Now, it is technically my job to get you started, quote unquote, here, but I do want to ask first. You mentioned that there have been misconceptions for decades about chiropractic care. How have you seen that trend change over the years? Have we been moving in a positive direction, and if so, or if not, like what are the forces behind that?
So it's kind of been stagnant, I'm going to say. We haven't really gotten better, we haven't really gotten worse. I will say that probably the things when you tell someone you're gonna go see a chiropractor, and if someone doesn't like us, they either say we're crooks or we're dangerous. Those are kind of the 2 things that repeatedly come up, and the reason why they label us as dangerous is we're accused of causing strokes. And when we look at the research, it's not supported. If you talk to a medical doctor or a neurologist, they're going to say, oh, absolutely, chiropractors cause stroke. The issue is why does someone seek out a chiropractor? And two of the most common causes is low back pain and neck and headaches. Like neck pain and headaches. Like that's kind of the thing they come and see us for. Well, a common symptom of a stroke is neck pain and a headache, which means it's the job as the chiropractor to identify and go, this is not a neck pain I can treat. This is a neck pain that needs to go to the ER because it's sometimes hard to differentiate those two things, which is why it takes you have to have a thorough history. You have to have a thorough exam. You need to actually take the time to be a doctor of chiropractic and not just a technician who adjusts. And this is where I like to differentiate chiropractic into two categories: those that are evidence based, who are following the research and doing what's best for their patients based off the research versus a more traditional philosophically based chiropractor that kind of ignores that research and doesn't always do what's best. And those philosophical chiropractors have a tendency to not diagnose based on medical diagnoses. They diagnose based on the made up term of subluxation. And I say made up term of subluxation because if you Google subluxation, there's definitely a medical term, and it's a partially dislocated joint. And that's totally a thing. The issue is that chiropractic has made up the term vertebral subluxation, which countlessly through research has been proven to not exist. We don't fully have the research behind how or why an adjustment works or how or why an adjustment relieves pain other than it does. And we have research comparing back surgery to chiropractic versus nothing. And back surgery and chiropractic does similarly, except chiropractic costs less, which makes it a good thing for your bottom line. But when it comes to the subluxation complex, it's just not a term. It creates too much confusion, so I don't use it. What I call I adjust is what the medical literature supports, which is a somatic dysfunction of the spine, which is a lot bigger word. And guess what? You as a patient, you as a consumer, don't need to understand that word. You don't need to be taught that. You just need to understand, hey, this spot on me hurts. It's sticky. It's not moving well. I adjust you. It feels better. Cool. As long as we've done a thorough history and a thorough exam to make sure you're a good candidate for care.
Wow. I was going to get you started, and you got started. Thank you. I have to ask. The term is subluxation, right? The
Yes.
the kind of like not real diagnosis that has too much like mystery around it to really diagnose it safely in a chiropractic setting. Am I describing that correctly?
Well, a subluxation is so there are two terms. Subluxation, which is the medical definition of a partially dislocated joint,
Right.
totally a thing.
Right.
But if you have a true subluxation, you need to be in an emergency room
Gotcha.
seeing an orthopedic surgeon. The vertebral subluxation is the mythical unicorn that doesn't have a clear definition, does not have a clear diagnostic criteria, and when you're in the vitalistic philosophical chiropractic realm, they call it the root of all disease. And this disease goes beyond pain. They'll claim that the subluxation causes cancer, causes autism, causes any form of disease, and that their adjustment can cure it, which frankly, no. Can I swear on this podcast?
You can
Can,
swear. It's
can
fine. Yeah, it's
okay.
fine.
It's fucked up. No, that's not what we treat. We are neuromusculoskeletal specialists. If you're seeing a chiropractor promoting that they can cure autism, that they can fix ADHD, that they can cure non-neuromusculoskeletal conditions, run away.
That is fucked up because like that's in the cultural context of chiropractic itself being stigmatized and arguments still being made about whether or not it's effective at what it's actually doing. So like in the context of that, there are certain people who would argue that it can cure like all of these other unrelated things. That's not healthy for the dialogue. I wanted
And
to sorry, go ahead.
to quote my favorite podcast, Sawbones, if it cure alls cure nothing. If someone tries to claim that one thing will cure absolutely everything, run away. We are neuromusculoskeletal specialists. We are a great piece in the puzzle of care when it comes to pain. If you have low back pain, if you have neck pain, if you have knee pain, find a chiropractor that is ethical and evidence based because one, you don't want to get an x-ray, as weird as that sounds. There are criteria for when you do and don't. But just randomly getting an x-ray or seeing chiropractors that x-ray everyone, really bad because you as a general consumer can't read an x-ray. They can literally tell you whatever they want on that x-ray and scare you into thousands and thousands of dollars of care that you don't need. And this is where I say we get labeled as crooks because people go in, see their chiro, they're told this scary story, they then go and see a physical therapist or their medical doctor, and the medical doctor goes, "No, that chiros was stealing from you." Yes, there are chiros who do that. And I fight it daily, but there isn't anything that our governing bodies will do about it, which just frustrates me to no end. But I can sit on a podcast and tell you what you need to do is find a chiro that listens to you, that actually takes what your goals into our account, does a thorough history, does an exam, sets you up with a reasonable treatment plan, which a reasonable treatment plan, 8 to 12 visits. That is what it should take for a conservative care plan for a problem that is a neuromusculoskeletal condition. So, knee pain, back pain, headache, a sprain of an ankle, a strain of a quad muscle, those type of things.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you think kind of the proportion is between like, or yeah, between the two groups, like evidence-based chiropractic medicine and then like the historical philosophical based? And where do the people on side B, the latter category, come from? Are they people who like slip through the cracks somehow, or like because I don't know much about like what the licensure process looks like, or what different schools, how they compare to each other, or anything when it comes to chiropractic medicine. So I was wondering if you had could provide any kind of insight on that, maybe.
It's a complicated thing. So, first and foremost, how they're probably, I think the last time I saw a statistic, they're 1/5 of the chiropractic population. They just happen to be they are very loud and they will say crazy things. And then when you hear them, maybe you're in a desperate place and they're the only ones saying that they can help you. So you go with it. Where do they come from? Well, they kind of come from all over, but one of the biggest issues that causes people to kind of maybe flip their mentality to that is frankly our student loans. Chiropractic school right now costs about $250,000 in student loans.
Wow.
And because of that, when you go and hang your shingle after school, you feel the pressure to make money. And the marketing gurus and the people pushing this, hey, easy fix. We get you 10 patients in the door, you convert them, and you make 3 grand off of each patient. It's really tempting to just do that. And that's what makes it really, really hard. Now, schools wise, there's about 14, I believe, chiropractic colleges in the United States. And there are definitive evidence based chiropractic universities. One I teach at is Northwestern Health Sciences University in Bloomington, Minnesota. Another evidence based one would be Western States University out in Oregon. And then there's National University that has a location in Chicago and down in St. Petersburg, all very, very evidence-based, and there's, oh my gosh, I always forget this one's name. It starts with a K. Kettering, maybe? Kirtland College down in Florida. Another brand new, they just graduated their first set of docs this past year.
Congratulations.
I know. I know one of their recent graduates, he's phenomenal, very evidence-based. And then you have the more traditionally philosophically based, and one of the worst is Life College Chiropractic. They're in Georgia and California, and they are very philosophically indoctrinating to their students. And they are heavy subluxation based. Now, there can be evidence based docs that come out of a philosophical school, and there can be philosophical based students that come out of an evidence based school. So, just looking at the school is not an easy way to differentiate. But yeah, when I see someone that graduated from Life or Sherman College of Chiropractic, I always take pause to really research and go, can I refer my patient to this person? Do I trust them not to make me look like a crazy person? And I don't look quite as closely when they come from like Northwestern, Western States, or National. I still look just to
Right.
be safe
Right.
because I can think of people that I graduated with that are just a little kooky. And I don't want people to have these experiences. Now, one of the other challenging is state licensure. Chiropractors are not federally licensed. So, medical doctors, physical therapists, I believe, are all federally licensed and managed through the federal government. Chiropractic is state by state. So, when you cross into a different state, you have different laws to and governing bodies to guide you. So, I'm licensed actually in 3 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. My largest scope of practice, so where I can do the most amount of things and manage the most amount of conditions is Minnesota, which is why I predominantly am located here. Michigan is the most restrictive, and they are traditionally a more philosophically based state. It's starting to change, but for a long time, they could only treat spine. They could not treat any of the other joints in the body other than in the spine. And they also couldn't do rehab, which is what most of my practice is rehab and working on people's extremities, so arms or legs. So it was really limiting, which is why I'm originally from Michigan. I didn't go home to practice because I didn't want to have my hands tied after spending so much money on a degree. Then after graduating, you can, after graduation, unlike medical school where you're required to do a residency, you can just go out and hang a shingle. I decided to do a 2-year residency in sports because I had the opportunity to work with a phenomenal doc that has basically been to every Olympic that a chiropractor could go to the polyclinic since the Atlanta Games. And I'm like, I want to learn from you.
Wow.
You're amazing. I want to have that experience. So I went and trained for 2 years in the Human Performance Center at Northwestern before I went and hung up my shingle. Chiropractic residencies are not common. They're getting more common. The Veterans Administration now has chiropractic residencies at I think like 8 or 9 locations. There are multiple universities that have sport residencies. There are multiple locations that have radiology residencies for chiropractors, and there is some nutrition residencies. So it all just kind of depends what specialty you want and what you're looking for, but majority of chiropractors do not do a residency.
So chiropractors themselves are kind of like newly graduated chiropractors are kind of in a unique position with an unusual amount of responsibility for someone coming out of a program like that, where they have to decide whether they're going to do a residency at all, let alone which field it would be in, or whether they're going to go straight into the practice, and then what that practice is going to look like. And you even described like trying to manage the temptation that some will face by giving into marketing gurus and just selling whatever they can to a willing patient. Do you think that like the lack of like government intervention is because of the lack of a federal licensure, because it's broken up state by state, or what do you think might be the cause of that, or is it again just kind of a general bias maybe?
I think it's a problem with the fact that majority of our state licensing boards are managed and ran by chiropractors. And because of this, a lot of times when another chiropractor and this has happened to me, when another chiropractor reports a chiropractor in their state, they will not take that complaint seriously because they're in the mindset that you're just trying to get rid of competition.
Gotcha.
But yet, a lot of times consumers don't know what is legal for a chiropractor to do and what is illegal, or they don't know how to look up a license. So the person that I had a complaint against, they were practicing without a license, but they didn't do anything about it because none of the patients complained. I'm like, well, do the patients actually know to look this up? Have the patients been informed that they're seeing someone that doesn't have a license to practice right now? Like what are we supposed to do with this? So it gets a little complicated from that standpoint, and it's one of the things that we're trying to change. We're trying to better regulate ourselves. But again, it's just so easy to get wrapped up into these marketing campaigns when you have a lot of bills, when you have those high student loans. It just becomes so tempting. And on top of that, so yes, couple options after graduation: open your own practice. Another one is to become an associate, and that's where you work for another chiropractor. The issue with being an associate is chiropractic is known for quote unquote eating their young, which is where they don't treat you well, they don't pay you well, so you're not compensated and you're just ran ragged. Are all associate positions like that? Absolutely not. Are the majority of them like that? Absolutely. I was in an associate position. I thought it was going to be a good fit. It looked good financially on paper. And then when I got to the practice, the doc got jealous of my treatment of patients because I had taken the extra time after school to actually improve my adjusting and rehab skills. So the patients liked me better. He got jealous, so he refused to market me. So most of the patients didn't know I existed. So I never could build a practice in that area. I never could become financially sustainable, which is why I ended up having to quit and I opened my own because I couldn't find an associate position that would pay me more than what I could make flipping burgers. And that's not okay.
Right. So it's like the fierce competition aspect of it like comes in at all the different levels, from like chiropractors at the head of the licensure board, like feeling that competition is the reason that people are reporting each other, to competition stifling your potential as an associate to become an even better chiropractor through that experience, solely because you were already a pretty good one. And so I wanted to ask, do you think that chiropractors should be at the head of the licensing board, the directors of the board, or do you think that there is another group of people, or do you think we just need to improve the culture around it, that keep chiropractors at the head of it?
That's a complicated question. I think for the most part, chiropractors do need to be in charge of that, but I think they need advisory members that are not, but that are informed because you don't know how a profession functions within itself. But we need to have doctors that are in those positions that are willing to do some difficult things when people are doing things illegally. And I think a good way or an interesting way, I don't know if it's a good way, an interesting thing to look at is like the dental association. They were recently had a large Medicare Medicaid case brought against them because they've been discounting exams, discounting x-rays, and basically incentivizing people to come to their office. Which, I mean, if you think back 2, 3 years ago, how often did you go to the mailbox and there was a postcard from a dental office saying, "Free exam, free X-rays, come to our office."
Yeah, like reminders that I need to go. And it's like I went like a couple months ago. I think I'm okay.
Right, but have you seen any of that recently?
No,
Probably not,
no.
because they had a
Wow. Okay.
massive lawsuit brought against them, and they had to pay millions and millions of dollars back to the federal government. And it was a huge issue because they had broken Medicare and Medicaid laws. Well, chiropractors have been doing the same things. How often do you see a Facebook ad? Come in for your $21 first visit, free x ray, free exam, $21 adjustment. It's the same incentivized care that eventually the federal government's going to be like, this is not okay. We're going to hold you accountable for all of this, and they're going to sue and it's going to wreck hundreds of practices, but no one's talking about it. I mean, the other thing is there is a federal minimum for what we can charge for a visit, which is $24. So if you're, or I think it's 24.95. So anything that's listed below that is illegal. But if I as a chiropractor report it, nothing's done because it's seen as competition. Do patients know that that's illegal? No,
Right.
because who knows that other than someone who's in the profession?
Right. That's the point of it being a profession. Like you mentioned earlier, we don't, as a patient, I wouldn't have to know all of the medical terms, let alone know the legal ins and outs of the profession. And then if you were to if you were going to a 23.99 visit per se, and then you find out that that's illegal, that calls into question everything else in that office, like from licensure to credentials to the actual practice to every aspect of it. I wanted to ask, because I've been really kind of back and forth on what responsible and ethical marketing looks like in the health industry in general. From like prescription meds to things like dentistry to pretty much everything. And I was wondering if, in terms of chiropractic care, if you had any kind of insight you could provide on that, or thoughts or opinions that you had on like what ethical, responsible marketing, how can you appeal to potential patients without feeling like you're making them come maybe if they don't have to, or trying to convince them to get something they don't need. Or what is the referral system like too? That was another
Ugh.
question.
This is a can of worms. I think Ethical marketing is one of the hardest things within the medical realm, and it's why in every country but the United States and I think Mexico, it is illegal to direct consumer market specifically for prescription drugs. And I think ethical marketing within the medical realm is really challenging, especially when some are playing by the rules and some aren't playing by the rules. And until we get everybody on the same page, I don't know how to do that. So, things that have worked in my clinic that I have found to be ethical in the way that I educate, I guess is the best word. I educate people is I'll do Facebook Lives. I'll do a Facebook Live and I'll do it on low back pain. And I'll explain when and who you need to see when you have low back pain. I'll give stretches and exercises that could benefit you at home and see if it helps. And if it doesn't, that's when you go in and see someone. And I'll also educate on ways that other providers have tried to trick you into large treatment plans, such as how do we look at an x ray and recognize what's normal, what's not normal? What are scary words that aren't actually scary, such as degenerative disc disease? A lot of times when you're told you have degenerative disc disease in your spine, that sounds disabling. But what if I told you in the realm of what we're calling it, it's the wrinkles, it's normal signs of aging. As you age, everyone has degenerative disc disease if they've gotten up and walked out their door and done something. So, should we be seeing it as a pathological pain problem? No. But this is where that's so hard, and it's why, like, so the American Chiropractic Association has put out a statement called Choose Wisely. And Choose Wisely is all about x-rays, when we do and when we don't x-ray to the benefit of the patient so that we're not causing something called a nocebo. So everybody's heard of the placebo, where you're taking sugar pills, you think they're not a sugar pill, and you feel better. The nocebo is when someone tells you something that makes it worse. So they make you believe you're more damaged, you're more disabled, you're more harmed than what you are. So your body believes it and it makes the pain worse. Nocebos from providers are some of the worst, and chiropractors are not the only ones that are at fault for this. Any profession that doesn't do an effective job of actually communicating and teaching you what's going on with your body can be accused of having a nocebo effect on what's wrong with you or what's not wrong with you.
So responsible marketing is really just education and being a trusted source and saying kind of softly, "Hey, is this you?" instead of like yelling, this is you, come see me now."
Yeah, I think it's about educating and making sure you're making informed decisions. It's about really conveying what you need. So, predominantly, I mean, I see everyone, but predominantly, I work with athletes or active adults. My ideal patient population. So, if I could pick my favorite people to come into my office, it's 25 to 45-year-old adults that want to be active. And if I narrow it down even a little bit more, it's women and non-binary athletes. Like, those are my favorite humans. They're so much fun. But I'll work with anybody, but I want them to have some activity that they want to do, because then I can go to that activity and drive the goals of my rehab to them. Because rehab, home exercises, not a fun way to phrase it. I like to call it skills and drills. People like to learn new skills. It just works better.
That's marketing.
So that, yeah, exactly. It's
Right.
selling them on, I'm going to give you skills to make you better. I see myself when I'm trying to see how I fit into a patient's story. I am not the hero of the patient's story, because if they're reliant on me to fix their problem, they're never going to get better because they haven't actually taken the time to look inwards of themselves and figure out what they're doing, whether it be how they have their desk set up at work, how they're actually biomechanically moving through a lift, what they're doing to potentially cause the problem. So I'm a guide. They're the hero. The patient is the hero of the story, and they need to have the self-awareness, the self-efficacy, the body, the control of their own body, and I'm just there to help them. and guide them and give them tools to take control. So I see that's how I fit into it. I see that's how I fit my marketing into it. But if I have someone that doesn't want to have they don't want that control, then they're not going to be a good fit for my practice.
Are there are there consistent groups? Like you mentioned working primarily with athletes and really enjoying work with people who have at least some kind of set goal they're working towards. Are there specific groups of people, whether it's by profession or by interest, that are maybe unlikely to seek a chiropractor, but that maybe should consider it or should see it at least as an option on the table due to the nature of whatever activity they're performing?
I think at I can almost say everyone at some point in their life could benefit from a short round of care. And I say that not everyone needs to see a chiropractor every week for the rest of their life. But there are going to be times that you're going to I mean, the joke is you turn 30, you wake up from sleeping wrong, and you feel like garbage the next day. Like, that's kind of the standing joke. All of a sudden, you turn the age of 30 and you can't get out of bed. You sleep wrong, you're up too late. That might be someone who's just having general aches and pains that may benefit from going and seeing a chiropractor because look at what happens in our life. Elementary school, high school, college. We're active, we're moving. We're not sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day. Then we graduate college, maybe we go to graduate school, maybe we start to get into our professions. And most of our professions, sitting in a desk all day, not moving. This is a drastic change from what our body has been used to for the last 25 years. So for 5 years, our body's like, okay, we can handle this. But as we age, our metabolism slows. Our diet may not be as well. We may add additional life stressors because our job is more busy. We're also starting to have bills. And there's just this accumulation of stuff that starts to become a problem in our life. So if we think of our life, our stress, and our pain levels as a glass, well, every time we add a little bit more to that glass, the glass fills up. And when we go be active and exercise and get enough sleep and eat correctly, our glass empties out. Well, as we age, we don't do that as well. So our glass keeps filling up and eventually it spills over, and now we have an injury. But we can't really attribute to what this injury was. We just woke up one day and we threw our back out. Oh, we were putting on a sock and we threw out our low back, which is a whole nother language piece that I'm not going to get into. But those moments would be a great time to have a chiropractor in your back pocket to one, talk to you about drinking more water, getting enough sleep, and moving, and what movements are going to best benefit you to prevent that from happening and get you out of pain without getting you addicted to, let's say, an opioid medication, which is a huge problem in our country right now because we were a little too prescription happy because initially it was touted as a non-addictive medication, which we all know that's not the case anymore.
Right. Well, it seems like it's hard to say that anything that makes you feel good can really be described as non-addictive entirely. You know, like
Correct.
I'm allergic to bananas, but I really like bananas, and so I eat them anyways, almost as if I were addicted to them. But I know they're bad for me because they make my mouth really itchy and my throat swell up a tiny bit. But I don't stop eating them, and that's
You're
that. So that,
eventually going to regret that. Like, your allergies can get worse with time.
don't tell me that.
I have to tell you that. I'm a doctor.
Dang it. One thing I wanted to touch on. I was going to save these for kind of the end of the episode, but also both of them include components that we've kind of touched on. So one thing I want to incorporate into the show is having like listener questions. But how do we have listeners? This is the first episode. I just reached out to a few friends who seemed relevant to the discussion in one way or another. One of whom is my old roommate, who's now a personal trainer, and one of whom is a family friend who is like best friends with his chiropractor and is someone who needs to be seeing a chiropractor every week almost because of his back issues. And so I asked them both for kind of listener questions, and what I got instead were more like opinions statements. But I think that we could pull questions out of these, and I think they're relevant, and I think that we've already kind of touched on them, so they could be a good opportunity to kind of dive a little bit deeper. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, the first one is from Sean, my old roommate. He says, "This is not so much a question, it is not, but I think from my experience in getting an exercise science degree and also taking a class and getting certified for personal training, there was a lot that was missed. The main focus was on head knowledge and being able to identify proper form, technique, type of workout, etc. on paper. Lots of visual emphasis and a large majority of time spent studying the minute details of the science behind different aspects of exercise in the body. What I found I really needed entering the field as a trainer or a fitness instructor was experience physically demonstrating various exercise and communicating effectively to clients. It's one thing to be able to see that something is off with someone's form, but to be able to properly correct them and demonstrate in a way that makes them feel comfortable is way more important. Marketing and building a client base is another big one. I've taken a marketing class in college as part of my exercise science curriculum that focused a lot on broad marketing techniques for businesses and how different companies market their product to consumers, but I was never taught how to market myself as a trainer or how to grow my client base. More focus on head knowledge of general marketing instead of learning ways to set up free sessions, referral systems to network to more people, or how to turn a conversation about giving wellness tips into booking personal sessions. Overall, I learned a lot from my college experience, and once a client does sign up for sessions, I'm able to comfortably answer the why questions and demonstrate proper knowledge of the body. But there was a gap between a lack of kinesthetic learning and not enough focus on how to communicate to clients. So I was wondering, I think there's a lot of overlap here in terms of the experience as being a new fitness instructor. Very different, but between being a new fitness instructor and being a chiropractor, in that because it's such a small share of the market, and because you're likely not working in like a giant healthcare facility, there's a lot of pressure on you to build relationships with clients. And in general too, as far as the kind of differences between like physical hands-on learning and head knowledge, kind of what were the gaps that you witnessed or experienced throughout your education that you then learned later on in your profession, whether it be marketing, client relationships, or more of the hands-on learning stuff that you wish you had known before you had gone into the profession itself post grad?
So I think communication is a big one. We spend a lot of time learning really big words of like how do we relate to the body? Anterior, posterior, lateral, medial, distal, proximal. We also learn individual minutia of like the quad is four muscles. So we learn the vastus lateralis, the vastus intermedius, the vastus medialis, and the rectus femoris that make up the quad that everybody refers to. And we don't necessarily, especially in our history taking classes, will have like questions such as what is an aggravating factor to your pain? What is an alleviating factor to your pain? And those aren't really relatable questions to the patient. Those aren't ways to actually build a relationship. And the keys to having a successful practice, whether it be in a chiropractic clinic or a certified personal training practice, because in my clinic, I actually have one pseudo employee, and that's my husband, who has a master's in exercise physiology and is a strength and conditioning coach. So he's who I co-manage my patients with. So we have a similar thing where we have to be able to effectively communicate and building relationships, making people feel comfortable and heard and not feel dumb. Because, oh, it's so fun when we know something and we can just nerd out. But if it makes the person feel uncomfortable, if it makes the person feel dumb, that's not helping them. That's not benefiting them. So I agree. Communication is something that I wish we had spent more time humanizing our language and making it understandable and relatable. And I also wish they had spent more time doing practical business crap. I didn't need to learn how to do time management when it comes to personal and work time. There's no such thing when you're building a business. It's all business time. I didn't need to learn how like there were just pieces of how they put together in our business program at the school that was garbage. The thing I needed to learn was how to fill out a HICFA. A HICFA is a form that you fill out to have insurance pay you. If you don't know how to effectively fill that out, you don't get paid. I didn't learn that in school. I had to figure it out on my own. That's ridiculous ridiculous. So I think some of the pieces that are missing is the fact that a lot of times when it comes to institutional learning is you're being taught by people who haven't actually physically been in the field you're learning for eons. They went into education, they went into the university, they have not been in practice, they have not ran a business, they have not trained or worked with actual people outside of their students for maybe 10 or 20 years, and things have changed and they're trying to teach knowledge that they had from when they were in the market, and it's not how things are now. And I think that leaves huge gaps for students to try to figure out on their own, and that's across the board in education.
Do you think there's anything that could be done specifically in the chiropractic field about the education to kind of keep things more up to speed? Maybe more like faculty training workshops or stuff like that. I know in computer science you have to have your degree like renewed every so many years to be eligible for work in programming. I was wondering if you had any maybe ideas on what an answer could be to that dilemma. I know it, like you said, it's across the board. I was an English major, so everyone who was teaching me never left the university, and that's not helpful. And like I'm in a creative writing class with someone who has never published a book but has taught a bunch of creative writing classes. That's not going to be as helpful as one workshop with someone who's published a book. I'm sorry. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts.
And I think this gap is what leads to a lot of people ending up going to these crazy gurus that have them do things that are unethical, that don't benefit patients, that is going to lead to problems down the road. When it comes to how do we fix it, I think we need to pick specific classes and have more adjuncts teach them. Adjuncts that are both working in the field and teaching. And that's sometimes hard to find. And I think the classes that would best benefit those type of things would be like coding classes. So, how do we diagnose a person and convey this diagnosis to someone who's going to pay us money, such as an insurance company? I think a business class on marketing would be hugely beneficial to have people who are actively currently marketing. Because, like when I was in school, we never learned social media marketing. We were told it wasn't needed. We were just going to send and mail out flyers. Nowadays, you send and mail out flyers, they immediately go in the garbage can because no one wants to see that crap. It's all social media marketing. It's who's putting out the best Instagram content. It's who's doing the best TikTok dance. That's what's getting people views and interest in what you're doing. How do we curate that content? And you need someone actively doing it. So for chiropractic, I recommend the Modern Chiropractic Marketing podcast. It's run by Kevin Christie. And what he's putting down in that podcast is phenomenal ethical marketing for chiropractors. And it's how things should be ran. It is so good. But if you're not a chiropractor, that podcast means nothing to you and it's incredibly boring. My husband can attest to that. He's like, "Oh my God, we're going to listen to this. Please don't make me."
Well, it's so niche that it has to be wildly successful because it's so specific.
Yeah, it is very narrow-minded, but it gives you the information on how to do things ethically. How do you bring people in? Well, one of the recommendations he has is if you're running a sports practice, have a sports performance night. Bring people in to try things that aren't chiropractic that are performance related, such as Normatec or cupping or flossing or lifting or just something to get them moving, but get them in the door to see your face and see if they relate to you. That's how he recommends. Get people in for non-chiropractic items just so they get to know you, and you have to get out there, shake hands, and meet people, which is challenging right now during the pandemic, which is where we've had to shift more online. I run a podcast. Does the podcast reach beyond my doors and go far beyond Minnesota and the Twin Cities? Absolutely. That's okay. Maybe I reach someone in Texas who has a loved one that's located in Minnesota, and because they like what they hear on my podcast, they refer to me. Cool. That's awesome. It's all about creating unique niches that give clear information that is valuable, but doesn't cause fear based, or I don't want to bring you in because you're just coming in for a cheap $21 treatment. I want you to come in because you actually want to get better. I want you to come in because you see why you have a problem and you see value in how I'm going to help you get past it.
I think that's great. And I think your podcast kind of ties into that advice really well in terms of, and it's like you send out a flyer and it says, implicitly, I want you to come to my office if you have any kind of problem that you think I can help you with. But you do something like like a health and wellness podcast, or say you have some kind of performance event. You're showing that you're someone who cares about health and wellness in general, that cares about the well-being of people. So then, if they happen to need to, or to know someone who needs a chiropractor, they would come to you because they know you're someone who cares, and they know that before you have to send out any kind of flyer. So it's about like
Mhm.
character and like being a trusted source, like we talked about a little bit earlier.
That it's all about being that trusted source. If you're not able to be a trusted source, why are you doing this?
Can I ask you the second quote unquote listener question?
Yes.
It's again not a question. These are not questions. I don't understand how my request could have been so misconstrued. This one is from my family friend, the one who goes to chiropractor all the time. He says chiropractic medicine has historically been looked down on by mainstream medicine. Not sure why. The chiropractic balance is essential for proper functioning body. Not just back pain, misalignment of the spine puts pressure on nerves, which interferes with the signals being sent. Depending on what function the particular nerve serves, could result in not just aches and pains, but digestion, respiratory, even range of motion, and causes a change of problems down the line from complications. Very interesting stuff. I was wondering if you could speak some truth into that, as far as like what is the range of chiropractic care, and is he accurately or overstating some of the problems that can arise from like issues with joints and the spine, because the spine is the center of everything. So I mean that's all I know, is that it holds everything together. And so I was wondering if you could kind of speak some truth into that observation that came from a patient.
He's clearly seeing a philosophical chiropractor.
Okay, I'm gonna make him listen to this.
Like, I don't know if you saw, like, all the cringy, angry faces I made while you read that, but so
I
here's the
didn't.
thing. That is a classic kind of philosophically chiropractic statement of, if your spine's out of alignment, you can't function, and it's gonna cause this, this, and this problem. I mean, theoretically, anytime you have a nerve that is compressed, it could cause a problem. The thing is we've countlessly proven in the research that your spine and how your spine is aligned doesn't affect your nerves. What is more likely to affect your nerves is how the muscles relate to the so how the muscles and bone relate, and where that can cause compression. And so it's a combination of, yes, your joints need to be moving effectively, but the soft tissues around the joints also need to be appropriately stabilized and moving. And that's done through rehab and exercises. So if you have someone going to a chiropractor week in and week out and all they're getting is adjusted, they're not sent home with home exercises, they're not sent home with things to do for themselves, they are wasting their money because they are just shelling out dollar after dollar to have someone fix their problem, be their hero. Like I said before, the chiropractor should not be your hero.
Right.
You should be your hero and they should be helping you on the path to wellness. No one should have to see a chiropractor every single week at all. Okay. There is a caveat to that. I actually see a chiropractor every 2 weeks because I have migraines.
He doesn't have
I
migraines. The
Yeah,
my friend doesn't have
I
migraines.
manage my migraines through chiropractic care, so I don't have to take prescription medication that makes me woozy. I have a specific thing that I see a chiropractor for. I also am right now training in powerlifting to get to 1,000 pounds for this year. So my goal is to have my bench, my deadlift, and my squat equal like add together and equal 1,000 pounds. That's what I'm working towards. So I'm doing a lot of things to my body right now. So we're working on my hip range of motion to make sure I can accommodate the weight as I'm going into these movements. We're also working on knee stability to help benefit that. So I'm working both for rehab and pain management as I'm pushing my body into extremes. But if you're just seeing a chiropractor because your low back hurts and they're just cracking you and going, pat, pat, see you next week, that's not what your body needs. Your body needs effective rehab and exercises so that you can manage your own pain. Grr.
I'm gonna make him listen to this. Hold me to it. Dr. Mac, you do so many things. You make me feel like a blob person.
No, I'm just slightly insane. I have dyslexia and ADHD. I have an inability to sit still. My management of that has just been to add things to my puzzle so that I can't get distracted by like nonsensical things. So I like to stay busy. It drives my husband bonkers. He's always like, "Let's go. You're working again, aren't you?" So, but it makes me happy. Does everybody need to be as insane as me? No, it's not reasonable. But when you do find that thing that you have a passion for, when you find something you love, when you find that career that just makes you happy, it's hard not to not work because it's just fun. You like I hate billing. I hate doing all the billing. I just want to treat and help people. And if I could find a way to make money without having to do all the nuances of the paperwork, I totally would be down for that. But that doesn't happen. So there's always going to be things you don't like. But when you love what you're doing, it's hard not to just do it all the time.
What is the maybe even top three, but the general question, what is the like top most fun thing that you got to do as part of working with one of those sports teams or roller derbies or marching bands, something that you got to be a part of that is just unforgettable that makes you love your job like that?
Ooh, good question. So I have the perfect 3 examples. 1, it wasn't a team that I'm currently with, but I got to travel as an independent provider and be a tent captain for the World Championship of Rowing in 2017, and I got to treat Olympic level rowers from all over the world, which sometimes was challenging because they did not speak English. And I got to be there for 9 days straight, just bouncing between, being on launch and recovery, being in the treatment tent, being at the finish line, and just working with these high level, high performance athletes from all over the globe. It was just one of those, like, awe-struck moments, and working and stretching and, like, feeling their tissue, like, the muscle tissue was just actually feeling what healthy muscle tissue feels like compared to the garbage that we have. Oh my gosh. So amazing because there's just nothing like a high performance athlete at an Olympic level.
Right.
Thing two was when I got to travel with my Minnesota Vixen to the national championships because they made it to the equivalent of the game my last year with them, and just being on the sidelines and helping my athletes compete and maintain through the heat in Atlanta. My poor little Minnesotans in Atlanta, just having them down there and watching them fight for that win. They lost, but fight to try to win that game was just an amazing experience, and having had been with them from preseason strength and conditioning to the championship game, at every practice for that entire season, to watch them develop was just incredible. And number 3 was with my drum corps international band when we had our last performance in 2019 on the field at Lucas Oil Field where the Colts play, and getting to walk through the tunnel and stand on an NFL field and watch
Oh
my
man,
band do their final performance was just goosebumps.
that's incredible. I wanted to ask too, this is just kind of a thought that I had, but how would you advise, for or against or with caution, whatever, people who kind of get a little bit too into the like at home massage therapy thing where it's like walk on my back. Like how likely is someone to get like injured? Is there any merit to that at all? Or if someone who like has that kind of back pain, should they like try something else, or should they maybe see a chiropractor? Because most of the time that kind of thing isn't lower back, it's more like shoulders and upper back. And so I was wondering if you had anything to speak on that.
I have a few words. I
Okay.
have so, one, if you have some form of rib pathology, maybe you have a what we call an osteoid osteoma, which is a benign bone tumor. Maybe you have osteopenia or osteoporosis where your bones are thinning, and you have someone walk across your back. You can shatter ribs.
That's terrible. What percent? I'm going to Google this
Oh, I
to
don't
find
I
out.
don't know the percentage, but it is completely possible. Why do I know this? Because me as a chiropractor, if you don't tell me you have osteoporosis, I can break your rib adjusting it. Been there, done that.
That's crazy. So what happens when that happens? Like in your profession, what happens if like someone doesn't know they have osteoporosis or doesn't tell you, and then like, oh surprise, they broke a rib.
Well,
Like
my
what's the
personal experience was I was traumatized. I almost started crying in front of the patient. The patient felt really bad for me, which I don't. So again, it's all about the relationship you develop with your people. But
right?
the patient apologized to me for breaking their rib because they had forgotten to tell me that they had just had a DEXA scan and that they had just got diagnosed. And they were like, "Oh, I probably should have told you that, shouldn't I have?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, yes, you should have." It it's then I call my malpractice insurance, I let them know this happened, it never came of anything. But it is something that can happen, so when you have someone doing home adjusting or walking on each other's backs and you're getting those pops and those cracks, do you know what you're doing? Would you trust your housemate to give you an IV? Would you trust your housemate to prescribe medication? Would you trust your housemate, like, to do a medical procedure on you? We spend 3 years year round. So the program I went to was a 3-year program and it was year round. It was 10 trimestered. We averaged between 28 and 34 credits a term.
Wow.
Yes, so I went to an accelerated program so we could get done in 3 years. Yes, you can break it up and take it over 4 or 5 years, splitting terms, so you're not taking 30 credits each term and slightly going insane.
But you were a
But
little bit insane anyway, so it worked.
yeah, it was perfect. It was right up
Yeah.
my cup of tea. But have you taken the time to understand again, what did I say in the beginning? It's all about a history and exam to determine if you're a good candidate for care, because not everybody is a good candidate for care. There are specific conditions that are not good chiropractic patients, like rheumatoid arthritis. Your neck pain, I'm not going to touch it because your ligaments can become damaged and I could literally dislocate your spine when I adjust you. Other things, Down syndrome have a similar thing. Ehlers-Danlos patients, which is a connective tissue disorder, which makes you hypermobile. Hypermobility is a contraindication to adjusting. Like, there are times we have to rein ourselves in and make sure history and exam. Are you a good candidate? And are you doing that at home? My answer to that is probably not.
Right.
So, what harm are you going to cause your person? Now, this has become an issue because there's so many things online you can purchase. My usual thing is if you can do it to yourself, it's not necessarily a problem. So, like foam rolling, the massage guns, those are fine. Having someone else walk on your back, ooh, I'm probably not gonna do that. And yet I used to like I've had it done to me when I was in college before I knew better.
You know what's ironic about this? I have forbade people from walking on my back, not because I was scared that I have osteoporosis. And I did look up the percentage of people. It's 16% of women and 4% of men ages 50 and older. So people who, for other health related reasons, are likely to maybe seek like chiropractic care for lower back pain and things like that. So that's significant and important to note. Um, but I don't like the way that like bones cracking feels. And so it's really ironic that I'm interviewing a chiropractor because I can't. Have you ever like worked with anyone who like had that feeling? Like I can't stand like my fingers cracking or anything. Has that ever been an issue? Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It makes me cringe. It does.
I mean, you kind of get over it when you're in chiropractic school.
Do you like it? Some people like find it satisfying.
Yeah. It is not something that I hate. I am a chronic knuckle cracker. When it comes to my knuckles, I'm always I guess self-manipulating my knuckles. I will not so like for the people who like crack their own neck, no.
No, it's
No.
horrifying. It's like
I
horror
w I
movie stuff.
won't I won't do it. And I mean there was a recent case of like an a it came across the news. So like media makes us look so bad. But it was a gal, I think she was an EMT that, like, self-adjusted herself or self-popped her neck, and the reason why she was having neck pain and a headache was because she was having a vertebral dissection of her vertebral artery, so she
Ugh.
was having a stroke, so then she just adjusted her neck and just completely stroked herself out. Like, again, did she do an exam or history to determine what she was doing was what she needed? It all comes back. So my general rule is don't crack yourself. It's not a good idea. I yell at my husband all the time because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're doing it. But do I find the do I sound the cavitation? Do I enjoy the popping noise? Yeah. There are sometimes I adjust someone's neck and I was like, that was a good one. That
Mission
was real
accomplished, boys.
good.
Let's go home.
Now, I
I
do wanna say this, I'm gonna there's a lot of YouTube chiropractors, there's a lot of TikTok chiropractors, and there is one thing that I keep getting asked from people that they wanna have it done, and that's, like, the Y strap adjustment or the, this guy in Texas, and it's like they wrap a towel around your neck and they pull it really hard.
okay.
Here's what I'm gonna say about it. 1, I do not do it. 2, it is not taught at any university. It
That
is
looks
not
dangerous.
it is not an accredited technique at all.
I'm looking at
So,
pictures. This is like somewhere between kinky and like a hanging.
that's a good description.
Thank you.
So there are some I mean, do what you will. It is not an accredited technique. It is not taught at any university. So anyone who's doing it, it was made up by someone and they just do it. And I don't know what their assessment for determining who should or should not receive this technique. And all the reaction videos I've watched of medical doctors watching this, it really explains why they hate us.
Have you? Do you know where it comes from? Because if they make the strap for it, then like it's a pretty big thing. So like, do you know like where it originates or maybe where it kind of blew up
So there's a
or
guy
how
in
long it's been around?
Texas that and I'm trying to remember what his technique is called. There's a guy in Texas that popularized it, and there's a guy in New York who developed the Y strap. Here's the thing when it comes to techniques, anyone, literally anyone, can make up a technique and sell it, which is horrifying, which is why there's hundreds of different techniques. 2, when it comes to making a device, as long as you apply for an FDA approval and you apply for a patent number, who says you can't use it?
Right.
So it's one of those really complicating factors, especially with a lot of the regulations that have been removed from the FDA's ability to regulate things. There's a lot of things that are going through that probably shouldn't, and that's just how things are. So, again, if it's not a technique that's taught at a school, I would stay away from it. And how do you know what techniques are taught at schools? The most common technique taught across the chiropractic profession is diversified, which is just kind of an intermixing of manual therapy or manual high velocity, low amplitude thrust, which is the traditional crack and pop that you feel. Activator technique is taught at most universities. Their Logan Basic is taught at Logan University. Palmer package is taught at Palmer. Thompson drops. There's kind of some standards. Network spinal analysis has been banned at most schools. It might be taught at Life, but we all know my feeling about that.
What was wrong
And
with it? What kind of practice was it that led for it to be banned?
let's see how I can explain it. Network spinal analysis is a low amplitude, low thrust. There's no cracking. They actually are finding, they're sensing where the restriction is, and then they're lightly touching so that the body will oscillate with the oscillatory wave to heal itself.
Okay. That sounds a
Do
little bit woo woo. That sounds strange. Is it dangerous or is it just woo woo?
Oh, it's woo woo. It's
Okay.
just woo woo.
Okay.
It's it's woo woo. I'm not a fan of it. I've had people swear by it. Absolute swear by it. This is the only thing that helps them. That's awesome. You found something that works. I would not call it chiropractic care by
Right.
definition of what is chiropractic, but and some states agree with me, like Wisconsin has banned it. It is not considered a chiropractic technique. If it works for you, fine. It's not going to harm you. It's also not going to cure or fix anything other than I honestly think the oscillatory movement, because it forces you to move and oscillate, actually helps you stretch and just generally move, which is going to make you feel better anyways. So it's one of those things.
If it's the only way someone can get themselves to stretch, maybe it's the path for them.
Exactly. So I mean, I just wish it wasn't considered a it wasn't labeled itself as a chiropractic technique because I'm just like, "Ugh,
It's demeaning in
ugh."
a way to the profession for something like that to be verified. Were there others that you wanted to list?
Mm, I, there are so many techniques.
Are there any
Uh,
that have been like popularized maybe recently or anything like that that shouldn't have been or that people should kind of watch out for one reason or another?
the Y strap and the ring dinger. That's what it is. Those are the two that are not taught at any university that I think have a high likelihood for injury. Is the ring dinger and the Y strap.
What's the ring dinger?
That's the neck pull from Texas.
Okay, so the ring dinger, like the Y strap, was developed after the ring dinger became a thing.
Yeah. Those are
Okay,
the
gotcha.
2 that I think I don't fully understand them, but I honestly believe based on what I've seen, the mechanism, what I understand of the human spine, it has the highest risk for injury if and it's not taught at a university.
I wanted to ask you, a lot of people kind of think of chiropractic care as like a quote unquote alternative, like inside and outside of like the medical field, just kind of in the general culture. But you've worked with sports teams, you've worked in all kinds of different contexts, you've taught. So for you, it's been very central in like what you've done. And like clearly there are groups of people like athletes who see it as important enough for it to be a core part of their team's development. So do you think that it's like do you think it's problematic for people to call it alternative, or do you think that in like the wider spectrum of things, it still kind of is that? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it depends upon the type of provider you're seeing. I also think it depends upon how the provider sees themselves. So I see myself as an integral part of a care team. Am I the be all end all? No. I am part of a care team that best gets my people better. And that means I need to be able to play nice in the sandbox and work with the other individuals there, whether they be medical doctors, whether they be physical therapists, massage therapists, acupuncturists. I need to be able to cooperate and bring my skill set to complement theirs. And that's how a lot of teams see us. Most NHL teams, most I think all NFL teams and almost all MLB teams have a team chiropractor because we bring that next thing they need, that next push to get their people to the next level. And you can see it like one of my favorite when I'm not feeling happy with my profession, which occasionally happens when I scroll through the social media. I go and watch the Connor McDavid story. He's a hockey player that plays for the Edmonton Oilers. He is the best in the world, and he sustained a significant injury that should have been career ending. And he kept seeing medical doctors that kept telling him it was career ending and the surgery was going to take away his ability to play. He refused to listen to them, and he went and saw a chiropractor in the United States that did extensive conservative care, worked with physical therapists, worked with personal trainers, worked with movement specialists to heal him in the off season so he never actually missed a single game. And it was a posterior cruciate ligament tear in his knee, which is a much harder to repair than an ACL. So he tore his PCL. He also fractured his tibia and he tore a muscle in the back of the knee called the plantaris. It was a horrific injury and it should have ended his career and it didn't because he sought the right provider with the right care team to care for him. I see us as the neuromuscular skeletal conservative care gurus. That is where chiropractic fits. And the more research we do into musculoskeletal, like orthopedic surgery, their surgeries aren't necessarily fixing the problem. Or when comparing to conservative method, whether you see a physical therapist or a chiropractor, you're having the same outcomes. If you see a good chiropractor, you're not always going to be able to tell the difference between a good physical therapist because there's so many spectrums. But when you see someone, they should be talking to you, meeting you at what they need. They should be giving you things to do at home so that you can self manage your care. They should be encouraging you to move and push through the pain in a scaled way because when we, just like Edmund Newton said, objects in motion remain in motion. And our body is an object that we have to keep in motion.
That was a powerful use of that quote. I applaud you silently here away from the microphone, and now I'm closer to the microphone. Um, so we've talked about like what a good chiropractor looks like in practice, and I think that maybe the use of the word alternative maybe stems more from the philosophical historical side of things, where if it's being treated by some people as like a be all end all to all illness, then it has to be seen as an alternative instead of being seen as an integral part with a specific function in a specific department. We've talked about the way that we've talked about what makes a good chiropractor. We've talked about what makes a good patient in terms of how that patient can vet their chiropractor, can ask the right questions, can look for the right things. I wanted to ask you, if someone is thinking about going into chiropractic care, like considering it as a career path, what are the qualities that person needs to have or might have that could be helpful, even if they're not integral to their success?
So that's a complicated question because I've known a lot of really good chiropractors and I've known some sucky ones. And I think the biggest thing that determines whether you're going to be successful is, for my opinion, is are you a kinetic learner? And a kinetic learner being, do you learn best by doing, moving, that type of thing? And do you have some form of hand eye coordination? Because everything you're doing with their person that involves in a chiropractic adjustment is all based on hand eye coordination. You have to have some ability to get your body to do something and effectively move someone else. And it's a lot of times based on speed. So, I mean, because there have been students that no matter how much we work with them, bless their hearts, they suck at adjusting. And this is when they typically maybe turn to a technique that doesn't force them to have to be a good adjuster. such as maybe the activator technique, which uses a tool to do the adjusting for them. But when it comes to whether you're going to decide to go into this, I think it's important to understand the nuances of there are two sides of the profession. Where do you want to be? Because that's going to help you decide on a school, that's going to have help you decide on where you want to be and how you want to go about your practice. And I think it's important to shadow and talk to docs. Shadow a bunch of different ones so you can see the good, the bad, the ugly, the crazy of the profession. And that's one thing I kick myself for is when I started looking into chiropractic, I only worked with one doc, evidence-based, rehab-based from Northwestern. I thought that's what chiropractic was. And then I got into the profession and I realized, oh crap, there's this whole other side of crazy I didn't know I was going to be battling when I went to a medical doctor and went, "Hey, I'm a chiropractor. I would like to work with your clinic." And they look at me and go, "We don't work with crazy people." And it's like, well, give me a chance. I'm not crazy. Let me be a source of referral for your people. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And it's a battle because of the behavior of other providers in my profession that has caused that a problem. And for the most part, it's not bad. Sometimes I'm scrolling through Facebook and I'm just cussing up and down as I see just some crazy, crazy things. My husband knows when I'm triggered about the profession because he can just, I have this look that comes across my face when it's something a crazy person has said. So it's just a thing that I think understand what you're getting into, have some hand eye coordination when it comes to getting into the profession, and recognize when you first get it out into practice, you have a lot of student loans and you're going to have to work. It's not just going to be it's not what was nicknamed the Mercedes 80s. We aren't getting huge insurance payouts. They're not paying for every code. It is work, but it's worth it.
What do you think the outlook is like for someone like coming out of grad school now looking to go into the chiropractic field?
I think that's a complicated question because the global pandemic shifted a lot of things. And I think there needs to be a shift within the profession. I it's complicated. People ask, would I recommend people go into chiropractic with how things are right now? And I think if you truly have a passion for it and it's not about the money for you, then yes. If you're getting into the profession to make money, don't do this. This is not the profession for you. I mean, I look back and I wonder, would I be less stressed? Would I be happier if I had become a doctor of osteopathic medicine, a DO? I don't know. Looking back, you have 2020 look at what's going on, but when you question things like that, it's really hard. If you're getting into chiropractic, do it for the right reasons and it's not about the money. If you get into it for the money, you're going to do things wrong.
I feel like that applies really to any real profession. At some point, even if you're making great money, at some point you're going to be burnt out if all you're focused on is like when you get to retire and what you do after you're done working. It's
Mhm.
one thing if you're like, it's one thing if you kind of just like work whatever job you can to make a little bit of money and then you go home and you live your life. It's another if you like go to school for a specific thing for like 4 to as many as 12 years. Say you complete a residency and then you go into that profession and it's still just for the money. You just made that huge investment. Like you should be sketched out about yourself, bud. Like that's a little bit concerning.
Well, it's now why we have podcasts entitled things like Doctor Death. And it
Right.
goes into some of those people who got into the medical field for the wrong reason. But I do think sometimes the student loan debt, when you graduate, even when you love what you're doing, will push you to do some things. And I wish chiropractic schools were a little more honest about, like, hey, you're going to graduate with a lot of debt. And your first 5 years are going to be a struggle. And you're going to cuss every person who said this was going to be an easy profession. But you just need to stay true to who you are and find good mentors. Find mentors that will push you to do the right thing and not the easy thing.
I think that's really, really, really good advice. Um, Random question, kind of, but I wanted to ask this earlier when I was asking you about the sound thing. Is it true that it's bad for people to pop their own joints, like their fingers and stuff, too much? Like, does that cause any kind of like long term? Because my mom always told me it was going to give me arthritis when I was a kid, and I never fact checked her. And I figured this is a good opportunity to do so.
This is a good fact check. Does popping your knuckles chronically give you arthritis? The simplest and answer I can give you is no.
Okay.
If popping your knuckles gave you arthritis, then me popping your back would be would be a bad
Yeah,
thing.
I know. I'd have. Yeah, you'd have like back arthritis.
Yeah. No, the noise you're making. So the noise you're making is called a cavitation, and it's actually gas in your joint dropping out of solution. Think of a bottle of pop or a bottle of champagne, soda for those who aren't in the Midwest and wrong. There, when you have it sitting on the counter, you know that if it's unopened, there is gas sitting in that liquid. You just can't see it. So when you unscrew the cap, gas is released and bubbles are produced in the thing. So when we're adjusting or popping knuckles, we're actually having the gas that's sitting in our joints expand, which is why it can cause pain relief. It's how it can alleviate. It causes a stretch, and we can dive into the deep neurology of the mechanoreceptors and the nociceptors and why that alleviates pain, but it gives you that brief pain relief because it's created more space in that joint by those gas bubbles forming. 20 minutes later, those gas bubbles are going to be reabsorbed in solution and be ready for another crack. So no, cracking your knuckles chronically does not give you arthritis. Otherwise, I'm doomed because I do it all the time.
And I'm safe because I don't. Is there any way to without like without giving like a 30-minute lecture, is there any way to go into kind of how the pain relief works with cracking joints? Because I would actually love to know. You said that the gas bubbles expand, and I don't understand what problem that solves, like when it comes down to the technicalities.
So there's a number of theories of how the adjustment actually alleviates pain, and I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible. But we have to look at how our body detects pain. And so we have mechanoreceptors, we have nociceptors, we have proprioceptors within our body. Proprioceptors are what give our body awareness of where it is in space. It's why you can close your eyes and still touch your nose unless you're drunk, because your proprioceptors are working. Now, when we get injured or we get damage to a joint, we can lose some of those proprioceptive qualities, which our brain, trying to find where the body is in space, might create pain in an uninjured area. That's one way that our body utilizes pain to help it try to find where things are. Now, of course, pain can also be from a true injury. It can also be an anxiety response. It can be a social response where we don't want to do something, so we have pain, nausea, or some other physical effect. Now, mechanoreceptors and nociceptors are the actual nerve endings that send signals to the brain to say, I'm hurt, I have pain, I have a problem, this is the area. The issue is just like with all things, it's our brain's interpretation of that signals to what's going on. So a lot of our techniques are about either one, overloading those nerve endings. So they just are like, I don't even know what's going on. So I'm just going to stop sending any signal, or it's about actually calming them down so that they are no longer sending those pain signals. So, depending upon what we're doing, whether it's, let's say, a vigorous soft tissue technique on top of it, trying to overload them, or adjusting them and actually creating some stretch and just alleviating the pain and helping the proprioceptors function, that's kind of where the pain relief comes in. Again, unless we restore the function using movement, we're not going to solve the underlying problem to why the body is having this pain in the first place.
That was a lot, but I think I got most of it. So, is it also a myth that, like, say your knuckles, for example, because that's the example that we've been using. if you pop your knuckles, is it also a myth that they're like that they will like need to be popped more often afterwards once you start the habit, or is it just like you just realize you like doing it, so and it feels good, so you start doing it?
Yeah, you don't need to chronically like, I don't have to pop my knuckles. I just do it because I like it. It feels good, and I also use my hands all day. Like, I don't know of many people who spend all day rubbing other people's backs, working through joints, adjusting, gripping, grabbing. So I pop my knuckles because it helps them feel better. Do I need to do it more often because I started popping my knuckles? No, I need to do it more often because I'm just frankly using my hands and it helps them feel better and survive my day. Do you once you start getting adjusting, do you have to get adjusted forever? No, there's actually you can over adjust. So we have given parts of our body, our ligaments and our tendons that are stabilizing joints. And if we get adjusted too frequently, too often, we can actually destabilize our body and make things worse. So there's a fine line we're walking to when we should or shouldn't get adjusted, which is why some people who are chronic users and chronically constantly get adjusted, when they stop, they don't feel like they feel worse because they're so unstable. Because again, were they given exercises? Were they given appropriate movements to get control of their body to actually have appropriate stabilization? It all comes back to you need to have the right exercises, the right rehab, the right skills and drills for your body to effectively function.
It's good to have these like things that my parents told me not to do debunked. Now I've got the more people I can say like I'm gonna make them watch this, the better, because like the more listeners by default, right?
Oh,
And then I get to feel good about myself. You get to feel good. It's all good.
it's a
So
win-win.
do you have like a consistent like or like a steady what's the word, like clientele locally still going despite your like jobs with these different sport teams and things? Was that a thing before the pandemic? Do you do any kind of steady work like that now, or is your office just kind of an administrative base?
No, so I see patients. I work generally 4 to 5 hours in my office each day, seeing local people, whether they be my athletes or non-athletes, and treat them for whatever is going on. My client base is larger than what I could see in a given week, which is how it should be because I have people like I had someone come in, I saw them for 2 to 3 months, we solved what was going on, I released them from care, they went out and did stuff. A year later, they came back and went, I did dumb things. My back hurts again. And then we review what's going on. Have they been doing the back exercises I gave them? It turned out they had stopped because they thought they were healed and oh, they hurt their back
Hmm.
again. So it's about just explaining the thing is one, you don't get to stop doing exercises just because your pain's gone away. The pain's away because you've done the exercises. We may need to modify the exercises or make them more difficult. And this is where I like to do rehab to fitness. We rehabbed you so you're out of pain. We now need to develop the right fitness program to keep you out of pain and keep you away from my office so you only have to come in when you do something dumb. And that's how I explain it to my patients. I don't want to see you day in and day out because you are having trouble getting out of bed because you haven't done your exercises. I want to see you because you tried to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and you fell down the mountain and now your back hurts because you fell down a mountain. That's when I want to see you is because you did something dumb. Or like with my roller derby athletes, I want them to be able to skate and do everything they do just fine. But if they get hit in a bout and knocked out of the ring 10 feet, that's when I want to see them because they have an actual problem that occurred because they were doing something they loved because they could do the thing they loved.
Don't say anything that'll compromise yourself, but how do you deal with like I would call them, you probably would not call them this, what I would call like problem clients who like are unwilling to like engage on their own in like the fitness programs that you give them even when you give them to them.
Well, I'm frankly kind of I know this is going to sound surprising. I'm a little on brutally honest with them. And I set the expectations I have with my patients, which I tell them, "Look, you can come in here every week and pay my rent. I am fine with that. Or You can fix yourself at home with these activities. I don't care which one you do, but understand you are literally paying my rent because you're coming in every week instead of dealing with your problems. But those are the type of people I attract. I attract the people that I can tell this to. I attract the people that we can have this honest conversation. I mean, when people are like, "Oh, you have to be professional with your patients, you have to be professional with your clients." Yes, but I also have to meet my clients where they're at. And when I have one of my firefighting, CrossFit, hockey playing athletes coming in and they're going, "Oh, I fucked up my back falling off a ladder." All right. I'm going to meet them at the I fucked up my back falling off a ladder. I'm not going to be like, "Oh, honey, your back hurts. I'm so sorry. Oh, let's fix your back. Oh, let's snuggle cuddle." It's like, no, you need to be back out on your rig helping people the next day. What are we going to do to fix it? That's the mentality I have. But that's also the patients I bring in. When I have a patient that comes in that just wants the rubby dubby, feely better, they don't like what they get when they come in and see me because it's like, okay, we're on the table, we're working, we're adjusting. Let's go in the next room. Let's lift some weights. Let's move some weights. And they're like, oh, I don't like this. Then I'm probably not the right provider for
Right.
you. But that's how my entire marketing is around. I don't like, okay, occasionally I'll post an adjusting video of like, hey, if you're having problems, this can help you. But it also says in there, but we're going to do exercise. But a lot of times I'll do like an adjusting video with exercise, like instantaneously. Cause a lot of people are told after you're adjusted, you need to relax and not do anything. And it's like, no, I want to adjust you and I want to see you out on the ice rink skating, or I'm adjusting them in their gear, no matter how smelly they are. And then they're going out and doing something. That's what I want them to have the mentality of. What I'm doing is all about getting you moving. It's all about you gaining control of your body.
Where does the idea that people should take it easy after an adjustment come from? Because I had
The
heard that too.
the doc telling them, the
Okay.
provider telling them. I mean, it's been a huge misconception for the longest time, and this just changed recently within the last, I'm going to say, decade. You hurt your low back, you're supposed to go lay down and rest. How many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, I hurt my low back, I have to go lay down"? That's kind of been, even from the medical profession, they're told, after a back injury, go lay down and rest. That's the worst thing you can do. It is the absolute worst thing. What we need to do is scale your load. We need to work with your body to figure out what's going to best make it able to move, best mechanically move within your pain threshold. We need to get you up and moving safely and keep you moving, because if you stop moving, we're not going to get you back to movement. You're just going to have fear of doing an activity. You're going to be scared to bend over. You're going to be scared to pick up your child. And you should never have that fear. You should never be scared. What happens when I pick up my toddler? Is my back going to hurt? You should be confident in your body to do the task. And that's where I come in to give you, how do you do that task?
Right. It's like my posture isn't great, so like sometimes if I'm like sitting at my desk forever, I get like mild back pain, and like I don't need to go lay down. I just need to sit up straight, and then I'll feel a little bit better after sitting up straight for a while because I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to do, and not like going and laying down because I hunched over for too long. Like all I did was hunch over. I don't need to go lay down or something, or
Oh,
like slouch
posture.
more.
Posture is a whole nother podcast episode into itself.
But could we touch on it like briefly? Is it as
Oh,
important as people make it out to be? Because for a lot of
no.
people, that's a huge deal right now. No,
No. Oh, well, it's a complicated subject, but the general rule is no. Our body's meant to move. So it doesn't matter. If you sit up straight, perfectly straight for many, many hours, your back's gonna hurt. If you hunch over and sit in a shitty posture, is your back gonna hurt? Yes. It doesn't matter what posture you statically assume, your back and your body is eventually going to hurt because you're not moving. It's more about movement. So this is where desks that allow you to change position, your ability to get up and move is more important than what position you assume while you're doing an activity. At no point should you be doing an activity for many, many hours statically not doing anything. That's going to cause pain no matter what.
I've had experiences where I used to be like a writing tutor at my college, and I would sit at the table and I would have like no student come to me for like a couple of hours or whatever because no one had to unless they were referred, and most people just didn't care enough. It was a small school, and I would sit there sometimes just thinking like I bet like there are so many layers of like society and sophistication that make this okay. But if we were just like in a forest, I'd look really weird right now, just like patiently sitting at this table. Like this, like no part of it is natural when you think about it. Like most of like we spend, like you said, we spend most of our days like sitting at tables or sitting at desks or sitting on the couch or wherever. And like outside of a very domestic setting, like none of that would make any sense at all.
Correct.
It's
Our
weird.
body
It's weird.
is designed to move. So if we want it to be out of pain, we need to move.
Right. Or even like swivel chairs. Like this is super unnatural. I shouldn't be able to like float around on my bottom and spin in a circle, you know? Like I should probably have to just stand up. You know, like that's the reality of it.
But even standing statically for many hours is going to cause pain. You
More so than just
have
walking.
We need to just keep moving. We need to keep changing position. There's a myth with runners that, oh, the running is going to cause knee arthritis. No, runners has fewer osteoarthritis in the knees than non runners. Why? They're moving, they're actually causing impact in the knee. Our body, our joints, our meniscus, our ligaments, our tendons like load. So when we're loading those parts of our body, it actually helps them feel better. Does that mean you should go out and run 9 miles if you've never run 9 miles before? God no. You're not managing your load. It's something I have to talk about with my athletes. It's people things I have to talk about with my non-athletes. Our body responds to being active, but we have to scale our activity based off our inactivity. So if we've done nothing for 6 months, we can't go out and expect to be able to run a marathon safely without probably putting ourselves in the hospital with damage, pain, and rhabdomyolysis and all the horrors that can happen because we haven't properly trained our body to handle the load. So it's all about managing what's going on and doing it in a safe, effective manner, but you gotta get moving.
Hearing that like and then pairing that with the average response to like some kind of like, oh, you know, my legs hurt when I run, so I don't run. I'm going to take it easy and be careful. Like we're so careful to not hurt ourselves, I think, that we forget that our bodies like challenge and like to get stronger and get better at things. So instead of doing things that might hurt us maybe, but that are more likely to just make us stronger and better at things, we like sit and let ourselves get weaker because we're scared of the challenge. I think you sound more like a personal trainer sometimes than like my roommate who's actually a personal trainer right now. I think that you should give him some coaching lessons sometimes. He's kind of quiet.
It's one of those things that, yes, my goal is to motivate you to get to moving, to doing things, and to do it safely, and this is where people are like, "Well, I don't know how far I should push myself. I don't know what I should or shouldn't be doing." Cool. That's when you work with someone who knows what they're doing. That's when you work with a personal trainer. That's when you work with a strength coach. Even myself, I'm am I fully educated in understanding how to appropriately train myself to reach the goal I have in 2020 to get to 1,000 pounds? No. That's why I have my husband, who has a master's in exercise phys and is a certified strength and conditioning specialist and certified as a USA level 1 weightlifting coach. Cool. He's going to tell me what I'm supposed to do, and then I'm going to go do it because I sometimes still need the motivation to do that too. I'm not perfect. I have days where the couch and watching Netflix looks a lot better than going to the gym, but it's recognizing that and finding ways to shift my perspective. Does everybody need to go to the gym and lift heavy? I would say yes, but that's a side point. No, you need to find what makes you passionate, that brings you joy. Is that dancing in your living room to YouTube videos? Is that going for walks? Is that skiing? Is that going for bike rides? I don't care what your movement is, what your activity is, just do it. And if it's an activity you hate, like if you hate running with a passion like I do, then don't run. Find something else that brings you joy cardio wise. I play racquetball. Is it a little stupid because my husband and I get way too competitive and both of us have bruises from each other hitting each other with the ball? Absolutely.
That's not ridiculous. That makes it cooler.
But it makes us so happy and it makes cardio fun. I will go play racquetball for an hour and have my heart rate in the 130s to 160s and have it up there for an hour and be happy. But if you asked me to go run a quarter of a mile, I would flip you off and cuss you out because there's no way I would do it. You have to find things that are fun that keep you happy with activity.
I think that's important, and I think that's difficult for a lot of people who might like normally think of exercise in general and think like, ew, no, because they haven't found their thing yet. Like I tried a lot of things. I tried getting into like MMA and jujitsu. I got really into like heavy lifting for a while. I'm like this like scrawny little dude now, but I used to be like 220 or 210, somewhere like in that range, and like a little bit shorter than I am now, and like just this big beefy dude. But it like wasn't my thing, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. And so instead, it turns out my thing is like walking and hiking and biking and stuff like that. Um, which is fine for me because it's like a little bit more easy going.
You
What
have to find your thing. There is no perfect. Don't listen to all the social media apps that are like, "Oh, you have to do yoga. Oh, you have to do tai chi. You have to do." You don't have to do anything except for what you wanna do that gets you moving.
what made you decide to get into the goal to lift like power lift 1,000 pounds?
Mm, the simplest answer is because I get really it's so petty. It is so petty.
That's okay.
I, as a sports chiropractor, deal with a lot of male chiropractors that don't feel me as a woman can adjust or do as good as they can because I'm not strong enough. But if I join the 1,000 pound club, I can more or less give them the middle finger and go, well, can you do this? Can you
And you can
lift
hang
as
a
much as
picture on the
me?
wall next to your degree.
It's so petty. It's one of those things that I've basically been told I can't do it, and anytime someone tells me I can't do something, I have to do it.
Right.
I can't help myself, and it's yeah. Oh, I'm gonna apologize. One of my children is about to join us. Come here. Come here. No? Okay, never mind. I have a regular podcat that likes to sleep on my shoulder while I'm podcasting. I thought she was gonna come
Oh,
over, but she decided
that's
not to.
awesome. I thought you were talking about literal children for a second, and I was like, why is she making cat noises at her child?
Okay.
But
I
I call my
don't
cats my babies too. It's okay.
I don't have time for actual children with
I
my
can
job
imagine.
and my work.
Right.
I have cats.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. My girlfriend has this cat named Precious, who is not here right now because she's staying, the cat, not my girlfriend, is staying at her parents' house, and we miss her very dearly. Hello! Hello!
Yes.
I should have recorded the video just for this specific moment.
This is my husband's cat, Mistress Meals Above the Hateful, and she
Hello, Mr.
basically
Meals Above the
hates
Hateful.
me.
Why do you hate her?
I don't know. But she's just this is all she wants. There we go.
That's awesome.
Now we're ready to podcast.
Um, so you have a passion. I mean, I read this, but you have a passion for female athletes. Is that also tied into some of the similar experiences, disparities between male and female athletes, the kind of competitiveness that arises between the gender gap?
Yeah, it definitely does. So the Minnesota Vixen is a professional women's football team, and most people don't realize that a professional full pad gridiron football team exists, and it is not the lingerie league. And
Hmm.
not only have do they exist, they're going into their 23rd season this year.
That's awesome.
And there are over 60 professional women's football teams across the country. Like, and the fact that each player pays $1,000 to step on that field. They aren't paid to play, they are paying to be on that field, to be
Why?
competitive.
How does that work?
Well, their organization doesn't have sponsorships and doesn't produce enough money for them to not be able to have their athletes not pay to play.
Gotcha. Because they're not men and they're not the lingerie league.
Correct. So for
Amazing.
them to even step on the field in full pads and play full contact football, they have to shell out $1,000 each season. Do you know how many NFL players would pay to step on the field and play each season? The answer is 0. Most of
Right.
them, when you ask if they would even take a lesser contract, the answer is no. It's not worth the risk, it's not worth the injury. My athletes have to pay for their own gear. They have to pay for their own travel. They have to pay for their own health insurance to support their injuries, and they still want to be on the field. Which athlete do you think I want to work with more? The arrogant, egotistical $1,000,000 athlete or the athlete that's paying every penny and working a full-time job to step on the field?
What do you think drives them?
Love and passion of the game. They love the game that much that they're willing to do everything they can to be on that field, and that's why I wanna work with them.
That's awesome because I feel like increasingly you see so many like celebrity level athletes who are applauded for treating their like craft or their sport like a throwaway hobby or like a a part time job or something, and then they go and do all these other things. Just kind of something they don't even really take their jacket off. They just kind of get it out of the way and then they go do other stuff, and they're applauded for that because that kind of like attitude, that nonchalance, is kind of like what our culture gravitates towards, especially our youth culture right now. Like we gravitate away from passion and we're like everything's kind of a throwaway. But I think like preserving that and honing in on that like level of passion for a craft or a sport is really 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 important, and I think that's awesome that's the kind of team that you're working with.
Yeah, so the fact that my players have to pay to play, it's just something that they bring. If they're injured, they're gonna fight me about getting back on the field. They don't wanna miss a second. They don't wanna let their other teammates down. So I love my women athletes. I also love my transgender and non-binary athletes because they're fighting for just their existence and being able to access the sport. So they are just a fun group of individuals that just have a passion for what they're doing. And I want to support their passion and keep them doing it for as long as they possibly can.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate how hot of a topic that is right now, and like of how confusing the like public discussion has gotten.
It's really simple. Leave them alone and let them compete
Yeah,
in their gender identity, and the problems are solved.
right. Absolutely. I mean, like it's one of those things where I think the problem itself, the issue politically, gets overcomplicated so that it doesn't have to be dealt with, so that it doesn't have to be faced. It doesn't have to be accepted. If we can just like, well, we need to work out all these technicalities. Like, okay, you made up the technicalities, so we don't have to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. It's a mess, but those are the people, those are the humans I like to work with. I just enjoy their energy, what they wanna do, how they wanna be on the field. They're what really, like, fill my cup and make me happy. Yes, would I love to work with an NHL or an NFL team and just have that experience? Absolutely. I mean, it would be incredible. Right now, the Detroit Lions and the Chicago's Bears, both their team chiropractors are women, and that's just amazing. I would love to take over the Minnesota Vikings so we can almost close out the entire division with women chiropractors caring for these men, but I love my little athletes that don't have the same access, that don't have the same financial support, and just their drive to be there because it's just a passion you won't find anywhere else.
Well, I think that resonates with you because you're a passionate person too. You're passionate about your field and your profession and your interests. I mean, it shows in like everything that you pursue. So, I think that's awesome. I wanted to ask you, what is like the social climate like in your profession, from like any disparities between gender or class or anything, or like when a bunch of chiropractors go to like a chiropractor party, if we had one, like what does that look like?
So there is some disparity. It is shifting, and there are things that have changed. So if you look at the old guard, the graduated in the 80s, 90s, it's predominantly white male. It's white men pretty much hands down. It's now shifted to where classes graduating are 50% men, 50% women. But when it comes to diversity and actually having people of color in the profession, it's very small. It is a minority that drastically needs to shift, because giving people access to people that understand what's going on with them is a huge need. And even now, with looking at the classes, it's still a very, very small percentage of POC individuals. And even if the marketing material for the university makes you think it's very diverse, it's because they hunted down the students that bring that diversity to the marketing. And I wish I could say it's different. We need more POC. We need more women. We need more LGBTQ plus individuals in the profession. And it's slowly changing, but predominantly it's white men and women that are cis and straight.
I think like more diversity in the profession could be really beneficial for an increase in the patient market too. Like just for that's the sake of comfort for a greater number of patients, because not everyone's going to be comfortable with a straight white male adjusting them. You know,
Correct.
maybe they want someone from a background that's more similar to theirs, or they feel understands their body more, or something like that.
It is a challenge, but then there's also preconceived notions. I've had people call my clinic simply because they saw that I was a woman doctor and they wanted me to treat it was a either a pregnant, or they wanted me to treat their infant. Because I was a woman, I had to know how to treat them. And I'm like, I am not your doctor. I do not treat the parasite carriers or the tiny little humans. They are not my thing, because I have done zero training in understanding the physiology of someone carrying a I call them parasite carriers. That should explain everything I feel about pregnancy right there. But I haven't done the training to understand how the hormones, how things change, what are the different stages of, and how things need to be managed, cuz I don't care. It's not my
Right.
thing. I also have not done training to treat pediatrics, because outside of, like, getting into puberty and getting into high school age kids, I that's not my area of expertise, because I didn't take the time, I didn't take the training, I didn't do the dedication to that age group. I am a sports doctor. I do sports things. For infants and toddlers and the tiny humans before their bones truly ossify, I refer to another person that has specialized in that. And
So
I
there are chiro. Sorry, go ahead.
so yeah, I really wish people would stop assuming that I care for them simply because I'm a woman. But yes, there is a pediatric specialty in chiropractic.
You knew what I was going to ask. I was wondering if there was, because it seems like I hadn't thought about that, but it seemed like something that would be necessary. I guess I tend to think of like adults age 25 to like and up most of the time when I think about like a chiropractor visit.
Yeah, no, there's specialties. There's geriatric specialties, there's orthopedic specialties, sports specialties, radiology specialties, pediatric specialties. There are a number of different things, and chiropractors don't have to have any of them. It's when we start to add extra letters after our names. So the standard letter for a chiropractor is a DC. But then we can start getting certifications. So, me personally, I have my international chiropractic sports certification, which is my ICSC. I also have my national certification, which is my CCSP. And then I'm also an EMT. So, I had my NREMT. I've also got certifications in techniques such as Factor, which is functional and kinetic treatment with rehab, and then I'm also an ART certified provider, which
You
is
said
active release technique.
EMT as in like the meaning that I would think that would have, like riding in an ambulance doing EMT stuff. Did you work as an EMT at some point in your career?
Um, I technically still use the skills. I'm still actively an EMT. I have never personally been on an ambulance, but I utilize it in providing sideline emergency care to my athletes.
That makes sense. I probably sound like moderately ignorant when I'm like, "Have you ridden in an ambulance, EMT?" But I
I
tried to
I
not do too much homework.
have.
I didn't want to overeducate myself before I.
Yeah, no, so I've never personally been on an ambulance rig as a EMT. I've done things as a student on an ambulance to complete my EMT, but I've predominantly only used it in the sideline area, which I am the magnet for trauma. So I've seen a bunch of things, but I recognize that my chiropractic degree and my certifications did not give me enough emergency medical training to feel comfortable in a bad situation. So I got my EMT.
Are there any? We were talking about ambulance, and this made me think of this. Are there any like folklore, horror story type things that exist within the chiropractic culture,
Mm,
or maybe even from your own experience? Would
I
you feel
mean,
comfortable sharing any of them?
we talked about stroke and its
Right.
association with chiropractic. That's probably the biggest thing, and we've talked about rib fracture, which is, like, the second biggest thing. But the thing that actually gets chiropractors sued most often is burning their patients because they don't use a piece of equipment correctly and they burn someone.
Like kind of like a hair straightener burn or something like that.
Yes, but it could be over a larger area, so, like, a hot pack burn, or maybe they're using a piece of equipment like a musculoskeletal ultrasound and they leave it in the wrong area for the wrong amount of time and it burns the tissue.
Oh no.
Like, there's a number of ways it can go really bad. But, uh, probably the thing that kind of it's patients coming in and having developed a trust with their chiropractor. They trust this person, they know this person can fix the problem, and they come to the office with a non-chiropractic problem. Those are my nightmare cases. When someone comes in, they're like, "I know you can fix this." And I'm like, "No, honey boo boo, you're having a heart attack. Let me call you the chariot of light and sirens to take you to the place that will fix the problem." So it's more it's those type of scenarios where I wonder, would a doc recognize this? Have they taken their due diligence to recognize? Because a lot of times, a lot of internal problems can mimic a musculoskeletal condition. Like, oh, if you're having gallbladder problems, it can cause left shoulder or right shoulder pain. Heart attacks can cause left shoulder pain. Like, there's just things with our internal organs and how the neurology relates to how we were formed in the womb that creates patterns and referral pain that we need to be able to figure out what's wrong. So, again, exam, history. Are you a chiropractic patient?
Do chiropractors receive referrals from larger healthcare institutions?
They can. They can absolutely, if they've developed the right relationships. A lot of large health institutions are now, frankly, hiring chiropractors so they can just
That's awesome.
internally refer to them. It's not as common, and especially in the pandemic, there was a purging of fluff from a lot of medical institutions, and a lot of times chiropractors got cut.
Mm.
But yes, you can absolutely receive a referral if you develop the right relationships. I try to develop relationships with counselors and therapists since a lot of chronic pain patients who might seek my care ultimately also need therapy and counseling to manage maybe some of the stressors that are contributing to their pain. So I need to co-manage with them. I also work closely with a massage therapist that we refer back and forth depending upon what's going on. So it's really about building your own network, and that comes down to also the marketing. A lot of times your referral network is where you're getting most of your patients versus trying to go hunt the new chiropractic patient that may not want you involved in their life.
You mentioned that you think there's been like a stagnation in the perception of chiropractic care in the medical field. But do you think that like the growing, if it has been growing, kind of referral network that people have access to represents any kind of uptick or trend or change in that trend?
I don't know. I think time will tell. I think changes in legislation. I think we missed a great opportunity. I mean, if we're going to look at positives out of bad things, we missed a great opportunity with the pandemic to potentially expand our scope and better integrate ourselves in. I felt very lucky that in the state of Minnesota, chiropractic was declared essential through the pandemic. So I never had to shut down except for when I got sick. Uh, I never had to shut down because they declared us essential because if we could keep low back pain patients out of the hospital, out of their primary care office, we help offload some of the medical strain that they were going to be facing. So that was something that I felt was a huge benefit, but then there were other states that we didn't get that designation because of things we did that were stupid, such as marketing to say that an adjustment would prevent COVID or that they had the
Oh,
nutrition supplement that would prevent you from getting it, and just doing really bad, unethical marketing to try to bring people into their practice. And that is where, thankfully, at this point, they did draw the line and they went, look, if you are promoting an adjustment as immune boosting, we're going to come after you. So, thankfully, there was regulatory boards that did that, but then that's where the states that they lost their essential provider status.
see, I was expecting it to be an issue of like short sightedness in the legislators, not short sightedness on other chiropractors who were just like nervous about whether or not they were going to have any kind of income through the pandemic and then ruined it for themselves.
No, we are our own worst enemies. Legislature doesn't have to do anything, we do it to ourselves.
That's crazy. So if we did have a chiropractor party, there might be a fight.
Oh, god.
That's what I'm hearing.
The factions, the lines are strong.
Okay.
They we don't Vitalistic chiropractors and evidence-based chiropractors don't play nice at all. Like, I've gotten into conversations and almost come to fisticuffs with chiros over the fact that I called them fucking idiots because of what they were saying, and that's probably not the word and the description I should use for them, but with the way they're behaving, with the way they're disrespecting the profession, with the way they're undermining our education, well,
I think if you have the exact same credentials as another person, you're allowed to say whatever you want about that person. Like if you don't, then that's one thing. But if you do, you guys kind of do the same thing, then like, but in different ways, and you disagree about how to do that thing, then I think it's fine.
that's
I think you
that's
have a
how
pass.
I feel about it, but they get very upset. I mean, if a vitalistic chiropractor listens to this episode, you are getting a one-star review.
That's okay. I'm gonna get one from my friend anyways, because of the rant that he got because of his chiropractor making him come every week and telling him about all these things. See, I thought complete transparency here. When I read your cover sheet and it mentioned what can chiropractor treat more than the spine. When I first read that, I was like, "Oh, that reminds me of this thing that my friend sent me when I asked him if he had any questions for the show." And he explained about all these different like respiratory and digestive issues that could be connected to problems with the spine. And so I was thrown completely for a loop when I noticed pretty early on in the conversation that it wasn't going to go that way. And so like this has been a genuinely enlightening experience for me in a number of ways. So thank you.
Yeah, when I say can a chiropractor treat more than spine, I mean we can treat shoulders and knees and feet and toes, not I'm gonna make your asthma better by cracking your back.
Right.
Okay, so as I said earlier in the conversation, I have dyslexia and ADHD. I see a chiropractor regularly. Guess what? I'm still severely, do not ask me to spell anything. I'm still severely dyslexic, and clearly I have the attention span of a goldfish when it comes to certain topics. So it hasn't fixed anything with my learning disability, and yet there are chiropractors marketing to parents who have children with learning disabilities. And that is when I get viscerally
It's a
angry.
big yikes. It's a big yikes.
Right, but when you're a parent and you have an autistic child, and when you have a dyslexic child and they're struggling and they're coming home crying every day from school because they're just tortured, you're gonna try to do everything you can, and that is when the vultures within my profession go after them, and that is what makes me angry and motivates me to be on more and more podcasts to go, "Stay the fuck away from those people. They are wrong, they are unethical, and they should have their license pulled." But when I say that, I get kicked out of chiropractic groups because I have been banned from 4 or 5 chiropractic groups from calling out unethical bullshit, and it
That's what happens when you're a hero.
brings me joy, because there are times when I'm, like, in a group and I'm like, "I think it's time I should be banned. Let's go to work."
I think I think what you're doing there in like being outspoken about the like scientific evidence-backed truth of the profession is really really important, both for the safety of patients and for like the security of the profession going forward. Like if we're going to make progress in chiropractic medicine being seen not as an alternative but as an integral part of the healthcare system with its own specific department. We were talking about referrals earlier, and I was wondering what the relationship is like between like what's the word I'm looking for? What the relationship is like between like massage therapy, referrals back and forth between that and chiropractic care. Is the relationship just like, oh, it kind of looks the same and that's why you're making that connection, or is there some kind of like professional relationship between those two things? I know like generally like pursuing that profession looks very very different. I know the actual work is very very different, but I was wondering if there is some overlap as far as clientele or anything like that.
I think it depends. A lot of chiropractors employ massage therapists in their office, so they don't even refer, they just hire them. I personally refer to a massage therapist, although he prefers to be called a manual soft tissue therapist because of the additional training and certification he's done. So I just honor that and call him that.
It does sound like more professional, I think, maybe than massage therapist because of like all the different images that could conjure.
And the other thing is I don't refer to him for my patients to go get a relaxation rub down like they do at a massage envy. I send to him for the technical skills of manual therapy that I just don't want to spend the time to do. That's what it really breaks down to. I would rather spend my 30 minutes with the patient pushing them rehab exercises and then send them to my manual therapist to have an hour of specific muscle work done to better their condition that I just don't. I don't wanna sound as petty as I just don't have time to do, but my time is better spent doing something else than what he is able to do for my patients.
No, that makes total sense. I don't think that sounds petty. It's like this is what he's good at and enjoys, and this is what I'm good at and I enjoy more. And I think that like, you know, as far as what your relationship with your patients looks like, that makes complete sense to do.
Yeah, but I will say I do have to go. I have to get dinner before I go to bed, and it is getting late.
It's okay. We have been, what time is it? 9. I'm sorry. I've been enjoying myself. Have you been enjoying yourself? Has
No,
it been
it's been
fun?
wonderful, but I've also have my husband giving me the look of, "Are we going to eat dinner tonight?"
I totally understand. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. This was wonderful, and if you ever have any questions or need to reach out again, please do.
I will, absolutely. Guys, this is Dr. Mac, Melissa. Check out her podcast, Mac Performance. It's a podcast that will whiplash you into health. Did I get the tagline right? Because it's awesome. And I want to make sure that I did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Night. Bye.